So I ask you all to bear with me as I reach back and offer for each of you, please take care of yourselves. Because there are parts of my story that can be very heavy, and I don't want to cause anyone harm. But also know that buried in my story is rooted in a lot of love and survival and perseverance and making it through. I know that this story is not really about my mom, who grew up extremely poor and whose Dutch mother had to stretch sometimes one piece of meat into 4 meals, or whose father was an extremely racist and mean man, even though he lived his life being looked at as less than for his own Irish heritage, or her journey as she hitchhiked from Michigan to San Francisco, getting arrested in Utah for panhandling and being barefoot on a Sunday, or her time here in San Francisco as some of her happiest times of her life, as she stayed on Hippie Hill, later sharing stories with me of her friendships with Janice Joplin and Tim Leary, before falling into an extremely abusive relationship, or her escape from that abuse as she traveled south and found herself living on the Manson family commune, where her duties were to care after the children who lived there, or that trauma of escaping from that place just 2 days before the famous state murders, and living in fear for her life after having to testify in court. Shortly afterwards, she met my father. I know the story isn't really about my father either. Born and raised in the Southern Baptist Church, to a father who did everything he could to give his family a better life, including building his own house and trying to create their own wealth, while Dr. King was preaching peaceful protests. How hard it was for him being a young black man, and standard family practice was to bury the truth of their own identity, never speaking about how we have made American blood. What it was like for him to give up his dream of being a piano player, to join the civil rights movement and burn his draft card as he was called and refused to go fight in the Vietnam War. I can't help but think of the historical traumas and its impact on our family coming from being enslaved. Did my father ever have to reconcile with that? I remember being a kid and trying to associate my last name with Janet Jackson, or later even to Andrew Jackson. But unfortunately, our slave name traces directly back to that of General Stonewall Jackson, some great-great-grandfather who was his house slave, a fact that I had to learn on my own, as none in my family would discuss it. How did our slave name and all that was done to us follow my family from Virginia to Texas before arriving in Southern California? How did that play out in the relationships that we tried to have, to the opportunities they couldn't get access to? And did any of these traumas directly drive my father to find peace and solace by and was he already an alcoholic when he and my mom met? I feel like I remember the love in my house much more than I remember the fighting. But it was after an extremely violent physical event that my mom left. I was 6 years old, my brother was 5, and she stayed gone for an entire week. See, he wouldn't let her take us. So she came back. And I remember for a long time after that things seemed really good. The physical abuse at least had stopped. replaced by professionals trying to get ahead in their jobs and reach the American dream. A time when my father thought that what we owned was a direct reflection on him. And so appearances and material things became extremely important. I remember the piano and soccer lessons, cheer and swimming, and cookouts with the family, and still eat, drink every night so that he could go to sleep. But it was not me, at least not to us kids. And he would tell us things like we could do whatever we put our minds to, and we could be anything we wanted to be. And I remember believing him. It was around second grade that I remember the bullying started. This was back in the 70s, and being mixed race was an anomaly. Kids were so mean. And I remember preferring being called Oreo over zebra. The bullying getting so bad. At one point, I was held down in the bathroom by 3 girls as they cut off my good hair. I know that I was so sad at that time. No one talked about it. What I did to make myself better was to eat. And my mom loved to cook, so she would feed us thinking she was helping in her own way, but she was sad too. I never felt like I fit in because of my skin. But by the time I was in the 6th grade, I weighed 190 pounds and I hated myself more than ever. I was 15 when I discovered pills, and I was using illicit drugs to lose weight within a year. I didn't really realize at that time that with my parents, the abuse had changed, you see. It changed from being something physical to being something much more different, more emotional, and later on financial. But a reflection of mine is to know that what my family did do was we all got really good at pretending like everything was okay. Right. We took our Christmas pictures and acted like a good family, but inside we weren't. And pretending became a skill that I developed extremely well, and I was able to hide my addiction for quite some time. Somehow being able to remain a good student, graduating. But this is the late 80s, you see, and it's the height of the war on drugs. And I wasn't even 18 the first time I was arrested and put in jail. And when I went to jail, I thought it was a rude awakening because I was looking around me and I thought to myself, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. This isn't who I'm supposed to be. That's what my father said. I often wondered later why my mom stayed so long in marriage and she wasn't happy. And she told me that she did it for us, to keep the family going, for the kids, not realizing how much more harm that caused, especially when my dad left. Just after high school, he was just gone, decided he was going to have a new life. And I didn't understand the full extent of the financial abuse he put my mother through until the money that was supposed to go to my college was gone, and he had maxed out all of our credit cards, making my mother a victim once again. See, his leaving crushed us all in different ways. My mother was so depressed, and my addiction spiraled out of control. This really began a cycle for me that is hard to try to write down on paper, but what I want to tell you is that it was a cycle of self-destruction. I would do okay for a while. I would wake up, I would say, this isn't who I am. That something in my life would happen that I couldn't handle. I would get caught up and I couldn't deal with it, and it would cause me to use and self-destruct again. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was stuck. And I spent the next 10 years cycling in this way. And in that span, I was arrested 11 times in one county and went to prison once. In between sometimes having years of doing good, I think I was 20, 21 when I thought that having a child, and that maybe if I became a mom, that would be the thing that would keep me straight. But having children didn't save me because the relationship that I was in became abusive. I had become my mother. So while trying to be a mother and enduring intimate, personal, and domestic violence, sometimes choosing to run away and be homeless rather than stay. See, the system had no problem locking me up, calling me a felon, and a failure. And at no point in all those times that I was in real trouble, did anyone ever offer to help me? Not even when my front tooth was broken and me and the kids had to sleep in our car. And so the cycle would start again. For me, that cycle eventually meant leaving the children behind. The first time, my girls were 6 and 5, the same age that I was when my mom left. Leaving them with their father, my brother, thinking anyone was better for them than I was. Only daring to reach out when I was in good shape, and hating myself more and more each time that I left them again. Being in prison and writing a book to my daughters, which they still have, telling them how sorry I was for leaving them, and that my being gone didn't mean that I don't love them. You know, I was only out of prison 3 months before I caught a new charge and was facing 15 years in prison. That was in 2005. My oldest daughter was 12 and the youngest was 5. I was offered an alternative sentencing program in lieu of prison if I agreed to stay for a minimum of 2 years. I'll never forget being in court that day, and the district attorney had my file in front of him. Paper proof of what a failure I was. His voice rising up as he argued, "Your Honor, you can't seriously be considering giving her this opportunity. Look at her history, Your Honor. She will never make it. She will never be anything more than a criminal. Are you out of your mind?" He was almost held in contempt of court. And when the judge told me she was sentencing me to that program, she said that if I left even one day before my time was up, that I would do every minute of those 15 years. And so I agreed to come to San Francisco to do that program in 2006. It was a place for people who have hit bottom. I worked really hard, and it took a long time as I fought to learn how to change my life and break the cycle of self-destruction that I had been in since I was a little girl. But also was a place that supported me by teaching me multiple marketable job skills. I went back to school, to City College, and whose entire program structure was based around learning to role model change and to mentor other women in that program. still impacts my family to this very day. My girls are 31 and 29 years old. They were far away, so not easy to visit, and were teenagers coming of age with a mom who missed so much of their growing up. After 2 years, the judge said they would let me leave if I agreed to be on parole for 5 years, but recommended, by looking at what I had done, that I stay in the program and continue to work on change. Not realizing how devastating and traumatic being abandoned by their mother was as they developed as young women. Did I really forget what it was like when I was abandoned by my parent? What was worse? Being gone as an addict or locked up in prison, or being gone in a program fixing my life while they needed me. No one should have to choose between having the opportunity to not die or to spend the rest of their life in prison or be with their children. When I graduated from the program, I could have had the choice of jobs. I knew that I wanted to find a way to give back. And I knew that I felt best when I'm helping others. So I chose to work for a nonprofit running a residential alternative sentencing program for women with their children. That's right. So that they can have the ability to reunite with their families and interrupt the intergenerational impact of incarceration, so other children wouldn't have to go without their mothers like mine did. I just loved being in a place where I could let women know that when they have the right support, structure, and safety, that they too could start to heal from all that they have been through and survived. During the height of the pandemic, the city tried to fund that program, and that was the birth of my work in advocacy, as I fought to keep those doors open. It was during that fight that I met other women serving boards in the city who were in the same place. I just couldn't wrap my brain around what I was learning. How could our city not be supporting women, in many cases, who have survived? That was when I decided that I have to do everything I can to be a voice and an advocate for all women identified folks in San Francisco. Today, that is my job. As VP of Reentry and Public Affairs for Community 4 SF, formerly CATS, who have been serving the most marginalized in the city since the late 70s, much like our church here at Decor, whose mission is to help the most vulnerable individuals of SF get off the street, find comprehensive services, and achieve stability so that we may thrive. So in that advocacy, I'm finding a seat at all of the tables that I can get. I'm creating tables where we can be on a local and state and federal level as we fight to protect all current resources that women need and to expand housing opportunities. See, I love this work. I love this work, but what I love more, that even though I lost both of my parents, my father in 2008 and my mom in 2015, I have finally begun over the past 8 years to be able to work on reuniting and rebuilding my especially with my beautiful grown daughters, as we continue to heal our wounds together. I am the proud grandmother of Jackson, who is 5 and starts kindergarten on Wednesday. He likes to call me Gaga and knows that if I'm not at home to help make dinner, that I must be in a meeting. And my partner of 17 years, who loves me and is still my best friend. We are all working, at least with each other, to hopefully interrupt some of these deep intergenerational and historical cycles. Just before my father passed away, he told me he was proud of me, and if I put my mind to it, I could help to change the world.